Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel, Julie McNeil Crafts. So I realise this is not an obvious start to National Storytelling Week, but this is a little puppy, a little teddy bear that was made for me when I was a child by my great grandmother, and she used to always make teddies. We had loads of them and she was absolutely brilliant. So we didn't have a lot when we were little, but we had loads of teddies because my great gran would always be making us them. What's that to do with National Storytelling Week? Well, I will explain. So I think I mentioned in my first video, if you have a look at the very first make that I did for National Storytelling Week, I do a journal page where I introduce you to Mr. Hippity Poppity, and that was a character created by my nan, who, as I said, was disabled. So my great-grandmother made my nan a teddy, and it was this cat, a grey cat, hence why I'm putting grey fabric down here, a grey cat that was kind of like in a curled up sleeping position, and she made her that teddy. And one year for my mum and dad's anniversary, so I can't even think how old I was. I will have to see if I can actually find, I'm sure my mum and dad will have it somewhere, but 1 year for my mum and dad's anniversary, my anniversary present to them was that I actually wrote them a story. And my nan helped me with that, and I bought one of these, you know, these sort of exercise books that you had that, you know, the bottom half, the top half was blank for you to draw a picture, and the bottom half had lines on it for you to write. So I had one of those, and I wrote them a story for their anniversary. And the story was based on this cat that my great-gran made for my nan. They weren't actually related because it was my great-gran on my mum's side and my nan was my gran on my dad's side. So it was like through marriage, but they struck up a friendship, which was lovely. And yeah, so my nan helped me to write this story, and it was actually entitled The Story of a Piece of Cloth. And it started off with this piece of cloth sitting in the shop, and because it was a grey piece of cloth, it wasn't like the most attractive. So people would come in and they would have a look at all the fabrics and they would feel them, and you know, this bit of fabric always got left behind, and so it was very lonely and sad because nobody loved it. And then one day this lady came in, who obviously was my great-gran, and had a look at this fabric and bought it, and the piece of fabric was so excited at the fact that it was being bought. So it's very excited, but then, much to its horror, it got shoved into this bag and bundled home. So there was all this kind of trauma. Sorry, my glue is playing up again. I'm trying to just trying to carry on regardless. Yeah, so then she took this piece of fabric, went home, and it was bundled up in this bag, and it was dark and it was cold, and then finally it got into the warm of the house and thought it was going to be safe. But what it didn't realise, that it was going to have to go through this transition. And so the next thing this poor bit of fabric knew was that it was getting needles shoved into it and getting cut up, and all of this was going on, and this poor little piece of fabric was just wondering what on earth had happened to it. And then eventually it realised that it had been turned into this beautiful toy, this beautiful cat. And then it had a journey where it went in the post, and then it arrived at my nan's house, where it was loved and treasured by this owner who gave prized possession to this cat, and so it was finally happy. And yeah, that was my story that I wrote as an anniversary present for my mum and dad. So when I thought of National Storytelling Week and how stories inspire, in that case creativity inspired my story. But I was just thinking, again, it was a special time. My nan helped me with it, so I spent time with her. She helped me kind of put it together and things like that. And obviously my mum and dad, it must have been the strangest the strangest present they ever received, but you know, I think they still have it. So as it's like National Storytelling Week and telling your story, a lot of the ones, like the first one I did was one that my nan told me, so that was like a family one passed down. But the other ones so far have been from books, so I don't know, I just thought that this little piece of my my creative history needed to go in the mix. I'm not putting a huge amount of glue on here because I am actually going to run this under the sewing machine. So because it's the story of a piece of cloth, I have no idea what I'm actually doing here. I'm creating a journal page. Because it's the story of a piece of cloth, I was thinking that for my background for this journal page, I wanted it to be fabrics. So I have gone into my fabric stash and I have pulled out a few bits of fabric which I am sticking down here. So this is almost like, sometimes when I start a journal page, I would maybe start by, you know, putting scraps of paper down just to create a background layer. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm almost using this fabric and this, and as you see I'm pulling threads out. It's because that's going to be my texture. So I am going to just stick all this fabric down because, as I said, it was the story of a piece of cloth, so I felt that fabric really should be a part of this page. And so that's what I'm doing here. Let me see. Just laying this down. I don't have a complete idea of what I'm doing. And then I have got a little girl that I drew with. This was actually, I did this in Inktober with, is it James Burke? He had the Daisy, the story of Daisy. And I did some of the prompts, but I never shared them online. So I've got her, and because it had the cat in it and it was a little girl, and I was a little girl when I wrote the story, I thought that worked quite well. So that is going to be the feature part of my page. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually just going to take this to the sewing machine and I'm going to just run lots of different types of stitching over it, again just to give added texture, and then I'll go be back with the next stage. Okay, so I have stitched that now. So I suppose the equivalent, if I'm building up texture here, would be similar to me putting down designer paper and then maybe going over it with a stencil. Now, I'm just trying to, I want to kind of tie it all together a little bit, so as I kind of would with papers and things, I'm just going to spread a little bit of gesso on it. I don't want to disguise the fact it's fabric, but just to kind of give it a cohesion between the various patterns, just allows it to blend together and look like it's meant to be. And I'm loving all the texture. I'm loving the texture that you know, some of the fabric's got a bit scrunched up while it's being stitched, and we've got the various types of fabric. I've got a grosgrain ribbon in there. I've got a piece of Hessian ribbon. I've got some cottons. Just scraps that I've had from various projects, and I've put it all together. Okay. And I've kept quite a lot of the threads loose, again just because I thought it gives a nice texture, and I'm kind of wanting to go with that a little bit. work with the texture that we've got. So yeah, I'm just, as I said, blending between the patterns, because obviously we've got that grey one was a quite distinct one, but it was the only grey fabric I wanted, and I had, and to be honest, I really wanted grey fabric in it because of the fact that, you know, the cat that was in the story was made out of a grey piece of cloth, but the green didn't really go with my image. So I've got that now. I'll dry that off and then have a look at what we'll do next. Hello, so I'm back off camera. What I've done is I've just added a few pins there, because that was quite a big part of my story that I wrote, was the fact that these this poor bit of cloth was getting stabbed with pins. So I've decided to include those into my page. Now what I've got here is an Inktense block. The reason that I have got Inktense is once it becomes wet, it is permanent and it does work on fabric. So I'm just going to darken this particular area up. It's got quite dark, that's okay. If it gets too dark, wonders of gesso will sort that. So the colour is getting deeper the more water that I'm adding here. So I'm just wanting to add that a little bit, and I'm hoping that once I have done that, what it will do is just means my girl will pop out a bit more and the page ties in a little bit better. So that's, and I'll maybe just put a little bit over this side as well. So you need to go canny when you're using Inktense, because as I said, it's permanent. Once it's down, it's not going anywhere. You could shove it through the washing machine. Not that I would put an art journal page through the washing machine, but if you were to use it on clothes and things like that, once it's become permanent, that's it. Oh, some gorgeous texture going on in this. Okay, so that's me just again adding a bit more depth to my page. I am just going to give it a little blast with the heat gun again, just to dry that off. And as I said, the reason I have done that is she will stand out a lot better now, and the colours tie together. And again, because it was a grey cat and a grey piece of cloth, it was important to me to have the grey in there. But I did also want the splashes of red, because obviously I put red in her coat. Now, I have been hunting about and I have found these. This is it was a piece of fabric. It was as part of a panel. So it was like a sewing themed panel for, I don't know, making something or other. So I've chopped into that, and so I've got a little bit of measuring tape, which I thought would work quite well. Got 2 bits, I'll layer that up. Like so. We have a little bit hanging off the edge. So, and then what that does is that will give my girl something to stand on. It will ground her a little bit so that she's not floating in the air. It's always good to make sure our images are not floating. Okay, so I'll pop her there. I think I might use 3D foam. Thankfully this page has come from my Junk and Disorderly journal, and what I love about that is you can take the pages out and work on them, but they're also bound by rings, which means that you can add lots of dimension to your page, because you basically just keep going till it's full. And yeah, because it's got the movement, it's not stuck into the spine in any way, because you've got rings rather than stitching. It works quite well. Now quite often I do a shadowing round my image. I thought that was going to be quite difficult to achieve a smooth look on fabric, which is why I've just kind of gone with that big patch of grey just there. Okay, let's stick them down. Probably should put a bit of glue on the back as well, but never mind. I can always rectify these things later if it comes apart. It should be alright. Okay, and I've just got a few little sewing themed embellishments. This was a stamp set. I think it was free with a card making magazine years ago. So I have just stamped that out, and I have wound some sparkly cotton thread round that. So I've got those, and I've also just got this little pair of scissors here, just to kind of finish that off. So I'll just put the pair of scissors just slightly down from the pin. Actually, what I'm going to do before I stick that is I'm going to frame it, because it'll take a while for the scissors to stick. Now, you normally see me doodle a border around or use a pro marker. Obviously this is fabric, it's not going to work, but I still think things are much better framed. So what I've got here is a Brilliance fast drying ink pad, graphite black, and I am just going to drag the ink pad around the edges, and so I am still going to get that framed effect, because personally I just think the page, I'm having to kind of push down some of the fabrics a little bit to catch them. Sorry, trying to do this so that you can see it. And because I don't have, I suppose what I could do is I normally do a full stitching thing around the edge, which probably with so much stitching detail in it, it doesn't need. But if you wanted, you could actually pull the sewing machine out again and just stitch around it. But to be honest, I think that might be a little bit of overkill. So I'm just going to put that round. And as I said, I always feel everything looks better when it's framed slightly, and that's a really easy way of doing it. And as I said, it's just, sometimes the medium you work with, you can't use your normal techniques, but it's looking at, right, okay, well, how can I still achieve that effect, but in a way that will be cohesive and work. So I'm now going to add my scissors down. These were an embellishment that came in, I think it was the September box of the Card Box UK, Craft Box, that's the one, sorry, Craft Box UK. I don't have a subscription to it, but I do occasionally get a box. I really want the one that was January, but I'm trying not to look because I'm trying to be good. Just realised the cotton bit's upside down, and not buy too much. Okay. So I'll put our little things of cotton, and again, because it was a grey cat, I've used silver, 2 different shades of silver thread, and I've let little loose bits hang out, because again I just think that is going to add to the texture. Okay, and I have got my Tim Holtz stickers here. I've got this one, The Adventure Begins, which I thought was a good one because I think the title of the story was The Adventure of a Piece of Cloth. So, you know, the adventure does begin. And it began for my lovely little piece of cloth that became a well-loved feature. And what was the other one I found? Actually, I put Tell Your Story. That wasn't the one I was going to go for, but it was part of, this is my story. A story that I wrote by myself. Probably shockingly bad, but you know, it's my story nonetheless. So I will put that one down. And there was another one about creating, which I still really want on the page, so I will just find that now. Create art. Because that's what my great-grand did. She created art by making the teddy in the first place. My nan and I then created art by writing a story between us, and hopefully we can call this art. I've created another piece of art based on those memories. So it's like I said a few times this week, creativity is contagious, pass it on. So that is my fabric art journal page that I have made based on a story that I wrote as a child, which was The Adventure of a Piece of Cloth. So I hope you enjoy that, and we've just got one more video in this series to go, and I'll be back with that tomorrow. Please do check out what all the other lovely ladies have made. They've helped me with this collab, so please do check out what they have done, and I will see you again soon. Take care then, bye.